What's up, everyone? This is Nick P, and welcome to another meeting of the How to Be an Anti-Racist Book Club. I am your host, Nick P, and I am so honored that you decided to tune in with us. Please make sure that you feel welcome to let us know where you're from. Let us know also how many times you have been in. I'm going ahead and pulling up this broadcast on another tablet so I can have multiple visions of you all.
Also, how many
But in
so
the
how many times
meantime, please feel free to let me know where you're
so
from, how many times you have been um, you have joined in the discussion with us. But if you were here last week, what we did last week is we were reviewing chapters 1 and 2, and we were touching on 3. I don't believe we were able to really go through the review on chapter 3. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to fast forward on through. We're in chapter. We've met all the way through chapter 4. So we're now on chapter 5. And I'm actually, if you were able to see the Facebook post today on St. Luke, on the St. Luke Facebook page, and you'll see that we now have a schedule posted on Facebook with which chapter which will be on for the next couple of weeks. What I'm gonna do is I don't see you all's comments here. So I'm going to pull up the Facebook on this other tablet. You're going to hear it pop up. So excuse that because I want to be able to chat live with you all. We had a few hurdles because of there's actually a convocation going on. The convocation for pastors of Black churches is going on, and it actually meets on Thursday evenings, and that's the that's just a little of the.
What's up,
I
everyone?
guess you could say
Convocation for
the
pastors of Black churches.
the I don't want to say conflict, but kind of like a conflict. But that is what has been going on Thursday evenings. That's why we changed just for January, or yeah, just for January for Wednesday. But we will be returning to Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. starting next week. So just for clarity, there is no book club meeting tomorrow. Will be today's the meeting for this week. Next week we'll be going back to meeting on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Um, the only time that we won't meet is on April Fool's Day, which is Thursday, April 1st, in honor of Holy Week. So we won't be meeting that week at all, but every other Thursday until we finish the book, we'll be meeting. And you can go on to um, the St. Luke Facebook page, which is at symbol STLUKE Augusta, St. Luke UMC Augusta. That's our Facebook, or that's our handle for our Facebook page. You can go there, and I made a post today about a graphic um, with the schedule for each week, what chapters will be on for which chapter will be on for each week. I can see that we have about 2 people here. I can't see who you are, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Um, but please let me know. I can see Christy, you're watching. Thank you for tuning in, Christy. I can't see the other person. But our handle, once again, is St. Luke UMC Augusta. St. Luke UMC Augusta. That's STLUKE Augusta. So it's just like what you see there, but add Augusta on the end. St. Luke UMC Augusta. That is our handle. You can visit our Facebook page there, get caught up um, on the schedule that we have for the rest of the duration of the book club. I don't know about you, but I've really been learning a lot, and really have been doing a lot of soul searching within myself about anti-racism and how um, we all are often complicit in the oppression of people of color. And the reason why I say we all are is because people of color, we can be complicit in our own oppression through even things like colorism by viewing, you know, lighter skinned persons. You know, just the stereotypes about lighter is better, whiter is better. Um, so we could oppress ourselves with these notions of having to, by favoring assimilation. A lot of those things can foster a sense of oppression, depending on how far we take those notions and how far we internalize them. But we're going to go into chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Ethnicity. Just in case you didn't have the book, this is the book right here, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. He has coined the term anti-racism, and therefore he is the leading scholar, the nation's leading scholar in anti-racism. But chapter 5, we've gone all the way through chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chapters, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, we talked about just skimming really quickly. Chapter 1 was about definitions, which is important that we establish how we use and define words. We often just take for granted and we just assume that how we define it is everyone else's definition and usage and experience of the terms that we use. So he does the scholarly, responsible thing by defining how he uses the term anti racist and also other terms like assimilation, and what were some other terms that he was in the very beginning of the chapter. He, let's see, anti-racist, racist, racial inequity, also racial equity, assimilationist, segregationist, and anti-racist. I can just go through some of those definitions with you just in case this is your first time with us. He defines racist as one who is supporting of a racist policy through their actions or inaction or expressing a racist idea. Hey, Christy. Hey, thank you for joining us. It's so good to have you with us. Um, I actually haven't eaten today, so I don't know if you can tell my energy is a little down. I grabbed a little snack just a second ago, but my energy is way down because I haven't eaten at all. I've just been working and working. But it's so good to have you with me. Hopefully, I can get some of your cyber energy to boost me up a little bit. Um, but in case this is your first time with us, or in case you're viewing this later, how he defines racist or anti-racist. We've already defined racist, but anti-racist is one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. So notice how they are. Notice the intention of language. Oftentimes, we just kind of bypass it, and we really don't um, take in what is being said. He says, going back to racist, he says one who is supporting a racist policy. So you may say, well, I have a friend, a black friend, or we just hired a black person on our on our staff, or you may say, I love black people, or whoever the group is, the racial group is. But what this is saying is not just if you like a supposed racial group that's opposite or different from yours, but he's also saying that supporting a racist policy. So that also calls into action of the policies that we vote for. So the people that we get behind and that we support. Also, your actions and inaction. So, um, someone who may choose to not be a part of anti-racist discussion or efforts, or just kind of just choose to be colorblind, or not really have any comments about it. That is an inaction. That is someone who chooses to kind of turn their kind of look the other way, and Dr. Kinney is defining that as still racist. Is choosing to not deem it worth your time. So anti-racist, he defines as one who is supporting an anti-racist policy. So he's holding us accountable to be active by supporting an anti-racist policy, not supporting a colorblind policy, not supporting a racist policy, not supporting a we're just going to be quiet and not say anything about it, not supporting a God isn't really concerned about that agenda, but supporting a anti-racist policy through their actions, not through I like them or I have a friend or not, but through their actions or expressing expressing an anti-racist idea. So that means being vocal, not just I don't want to say anything, I don't want to rock the boat, but choosing to be vocal and have action to support policies that are anti-racist. So enough about that. Racial inequity we also established is when we notice that the race is different for people. I was in a particular I was involved in a particular um, organization. I'll say organization, and there was a young man who I was very in support of um, his bravery to do a certain thing as um, to come out to the rest of this organization. And this particular organization was not affirming people who are same gender loving, and this person was chose to come out to the particular people who are connected to this organization. And this was this the friend of mine. He was white. He is white, and of course I supported his bravery in coming out. Um, and soon I also decided to speak out against some things that I was experiencing as far as racism and how I believed that this particular organization could have done more to meet people like me and come into our community and um, and be involved in racial reconciliation efforts. Um, this particular organization, I noticed how they would go against even the protocol of this organization for this was a friend of mine. So I'm not against that, but I noticed how when I raised my concern about an unwillingness to meet people like me where I am. And I noticed how the question wasn't asked, how can we do that? The question or what was said was, we can't do that because. So um, notice how what happens with racial inequity. We too in the church and in other organizations, we can be complicit in racism, and we can be complicit in the favoring of certain people's oppression and giving voice to their oppression. But there are certain people that their oppression we have. I just had a bologna sandwich. Oh my gosh, Christy, I wish I had. Well, I'm not a bologna person. I wish I liked bologna. I don't know why I can't get into it, but I want a turkey sandwich right about now. But I'm gonna get me a burrito or something afterwards. But so I was saying um, anti-racism calls attention to how certain people, their oppression, the entire country, will make room or raise up an uproar for certain people's oppression. But other people, when they offer their oppression, the whole, like, it's immediately a problem. So just like what we saw on January 6th, when we had a Black Lives Matter, I'm not saying that violence in any, I'm not making a statement about violence, about going out into the city and, ransacking the city. That's not what this statement is about. What I'm saying is that the people who were doing that, they were upset about human lives. And during Black Lives Matter, when protesters were often, they were peaceful. They weren't ransacking and beating police with police flags and beating people who represent the country with a flag of the country. They weren't doing that. All of them weren't doing that. However, did you notice how at the Capitol during the Black Lives Matter, it was a slew of police officers, National Guard, military, and police? They were there to make sure that the narrative was stated that it's a problem. You raising your narrative, it's a problem, but we will make room for certain people to raise up an uproar for their problem. And so, what racial inequity calls attention to, it just calls attention how the race is different. Um, Even when there is other oppression in some cases, that the voice and the empathy, um, we have a different empathy for different oppression. It's not the same in all cases. Um, that's what he was talking about in chapter one. I'm just going on and on. In chapter two, he was talking about dual consciousness, and that's inspired from W.E.B. Du Bois' double consciousness, and how he talks about in dual consciousness, where that's actually self-deprecating, how we will fight war against our own selves and our own truth to assimilate to a narrative that is not constructed for our well-being, or is not constructed for anyone, or for a particular person's well-being. That person who is internalizing that narrative or that aesthetic, that particular aesthetic was not created for their own well-being, but the dominating populace encourages and punishes that particular person for not assimilating to that particular aesthetic or narrative. And that's what dual consciousness is offering. How we may say, or people of color may say, um, I'm black and I'm proud, or whatever, however you identify. But then we also offer a contradicting aesthetic. Like, I have a friend, he and I were talking about just the ongoing debate about historically black colleges, and how he believes that it's better for a black person to graduate from an Ivy League institution. He offers that that's actually the dream, the American dream for a black person to graduate from an Ivy League. And I don't place me personally. I don't place the value in where they get a degree from. I place the value in their contributions to humanity, and what Ibram X. Kendi is offering, that even as we do aspire to fulfill the American dream, a lot of that is achieved through this self-deprecating process of dueling consciousness. We're literally dueling with our inner selves. Not saying that one has to graduate from any particular institution or the other, but it's offering that that one's truth should be enough. Another a outer narrative or dominating narrative should not be internalized to create a sense of worth. Um, but how he defines, like, for example, assimilationist is one who is expressing the racist idea that a racial group is culturally or behaviorally inferior, and they must and is supporting cultural or behavioral enrichment programs to develop the racial group. Um, so anytime we say that someone has to believe like we believe, or pray like we pray, or talk the language that we talk, speak English, or anytime we say that, that is that is favoring assimilation and offering to the person that they should not, live in their truth or not value their truth, but assimilate to another one before they ever achieve value or worth. And what Christy Wallace said is white people have their own dueling consciousness between the segregationist and the assimilationist, the slave trader and the missionary, the Blue Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter, the not racist nationalist and the non racist American. That is very true. And I would even offer a lot of the Blue Lives Matter, that narrative is often even paired with All Lives Matter, because it seems that there's a lot of narratives that try to silence or counter the um, Black Lives Matter, as if Black Lives Matter is anti everyone else, like what All Lives Matter is implying, or that Black Lives Matter is anti police, as that Blue Lives Matter is implying. When Black Lives Matter is not saying that no one else matters, it's just saying that Black Lives Matter. But there is I think there's another book called White Fragility. Her name is Robin DiAngelo. She coined that term, and that's, in my opinion, that's what Black Lives Matter, what that term really incites. It incites a difficulty um, within many white people of talking about racism and um, just mentioning anything that exposes it, causes inter wrestling. And I think there's an immediate sense of I want to dis associate myself with that, and so there's this overcorrecting. We have to silence the narrative as opposed to as a means of disassociating with it. When I think if you are truly an anti-racist, and you truly are in love with all people, someone simply saying that they matter doesn't isn't threatening to your well-being. It's just like I preached a sermon one time at St. Luke, and I talked about how when a child says, "Hey, it's my birthday," or we sing "Happy Birthday" to a kid, we don't say we don't imply that no other kid's birth matters. We're just celebrating this kid's birth. It's not immediately implied that only your birth matters. Um, but the only time that that happens is when we say Black Lives Matter, because when we say Blue Lives Matter, we don't think everyone else. What, firemen don't matter? So so what, crossing guards don't matter? Like, we don't think that. The only time that that matters is when we're inciting white fragility, when that occurs. Because when we say God bless America, we don't say how dare you. God bless all nations, or God bless all lives, God bless all countries. We don't say that. We automatically um, understand that it's not meaning only bless America, but only when we talk about Black lives does that happen, because we're exposing white supremacy when we do that. Um, and then the third chapter talks about power, and empower. In this chapter 3, Chrissy says it's hard to reconcile yourself as a racist. There is a fear of being labeled a bad person instead of embracing the knowledge of the realities of our place in racism and doing the necessary work to change things. Yes, I think that it's kind of like, in my opinion, as a Christian, you foster this pious nature, in the sense where um, you have to take on this side of holiness. And I think it's kind of dual in consciousness. It's like self-deprecating to try to aspire or try to put on this mask of holiness, as opposed to just really just looking in the mirror and just saying, "Hey, where can I grow? That's one of the most difficult questions to face for all human beings, is to ask, where can I grow? And when we talk about racism, it really is hard to embrace that. And I think that's why we never have overcome it, because we're unwilling to look in the mirror, even as a church. We're unwilling to do that. And then we're unwilling to say, yeah, hey, how about we not just have marches just, in the summer for Black Lives Matter? How about we just not do something for Black History Month? How about we just not hire a Black person and not allow them to also engage their culture? Um, yeah, we often kind of stop at a point, and we don't want to, go deeper and go deeper and go a little deeper and go a little deeper. But I do think that piety, that overwhelming piety, um, is dangerous. Detrimental. That's the word. Detrimental to um, our actual spiritual well being, our truth. When we're unwilling to do that, and it's difficult. It's not easy. That's why I believe that Christ said, "Take up your. What did he say? Take up your What did he say? What was the word? Cross. It was, yeah. That's what it was. It was cross. Took up your cross and follow me. Because when you take up a cross, the whole point is to crucify something, and that's not really easy. Um, but I think that's why racism is such a difficult thing to face. But how he defines race, um, in chapter 3, which is very powerful, pun intended. He says race is a power construct of collected or merged difference that lives socially. So when we're talking about race, this is what a lot of people don't realize, is that race is a construct. It is a construct, um, and it is directly related to color. We often inter as a misnomer, we interchange race and ethnicity when there is a slight nuance. It's just like sex and gender. We kind of interchange those, but there is a slight nuance between race and ethnicity. Race is directly tied to color, and ethnicity is actually tied to country of origin, like someone's bloodline. So race, like when we say Black people, actually, black is a very wide context. When we think of Black, we are thinking of people um, who are of African descent, and that's usually what we kind of see, because race is actually giving credence to what we look at, and we can kind of put you in a group by what you look at. I mean, by what you look like. Well, I need my turkey sandwich, Christy. um, so race is tied to physical traits. Um, like I was saying, Black is actually wide. So I have a friend who, um, I was just talking to him the other day, and we were talking about the fact that he's actually Afro Latin. And Afro Latin is just what it sounds like. It's people who, um, so that's really hard to say, but people who are they have Latin ethnicity and African ethnicity. But the point of kind of deviation is, so we all have most Americans have different, you know, ethnic origins in our bloodline. So that's why I was saying that's really kind of hard to define that way. But and I would just say that it's really close to them, and they identify with it, and they are aware of that connection, and they probably experience it in some way day to day. But of course, it's in their bloodline as well. But my friend, he if and the thing about it is when you actually look at him, you can tell that he's Afro Latin, if that makes sense. So because he has those features that when you look, like when I walk in the room, you can tell a black man has walked into the room. That's one of my line from one of my poems. But and so he has that kind of quality. I can tell, like, if when he and I are talking, when I first met him, I could tell that he was familiar with black culture. He's black, but he had an accent. And I was actually reading a book by the Latin singer, I can't remember his name, very famous Latin singer. He has a book called Me. It's an autobiography, very beautiful book. But I was reading the book, and he said, "Hey, I actually read that whole book. I read the Spanish version." And so we went into this conversation about what it's like to be Afro Latin. And um, when I was reading this chapter, it reminded me about this construct of race, and how like, for example, like Barack Obama, he's actually biracial. But we call him, in America, we call him black, because of how he looks predominantly. And when we experience him, we experience blackness. We experience, his posturing. Um, he knows black culture. He connects with black people, and but he very much is biracial. His mother is Caucasian. But really, what this chapter is calling attention to is how race has become a construct to not just identify difference, but to place value in the difference. And so, seeing um, the difference in one particular group can see that, hey, this group is of color, so we're going to posture ourselves socially, or position ourselves socially as a place of power over them, because I can readily identify, the fact that you are different from me, as opposed to if, when just like if two black men were together, I don't know what country of origin, and that's a whole nother issue, a whole nother story about why we struggle with being able to know who, our origin is from, knowing our bloodline. But let's just say, so two white women, or two black, or two white men were standing together. I mean, would they really know who's from Germany or who's from England? I don't know. I know I would be able to just readily tell, oh, they're German, or they're, of English descent. So this book is talking about how race, the construct of race, has made the playing field unequal. That when all we have to do is position these particular people in a lower place, I'm cutting out a lot of the competition right there, and so it places me in a position of power. And also, what that does is that even within people of color, we have internalized that, and we have developed something called colorism, where especially like in generations like my before even my mother's generation, where how fair you were, and if your hair blew in the wind, that really um, was a status in the black community. Oprah talks about how her mother made her made her often like sit outside, and she couldn't come inside sometimes with company, um, just because she didn't have the the Eurocentric traits that they valued during those times, um, the Eurocentric racial traits, um, which is sad. I didn't grow up with that experience. I grew up in a family where I was taught to value, just blackness. Not There was no colorism, so I didn't know really I didn't know a lot about that, but I know I some millennials they kind of joke about it. We kind of joke about like light skinned guys are in now or dark skinned guys are in. Like it's a joke, but it really just calls attention. It echoes to where we came from and the sense of how because race has become a power construct, how even people of color have valued color so much and lighter colors that they even created a position within themselves. Um, like, for example, there's a saying in the Black community that so the root problem of racism has always been the self-interest of racist power, powerful economic, political, and cultural self-interest has been behind racist policies. Absolutely, absolutely, and that's on page 43. Thank you for that page number there. Um, yes, because it's really a self interest that promotes this perpetuation of this power structure called race. And so I have a higher chance of having power if it's fewer people that are given the opportunity to have access to power. So if I cut all these other people out of the equation, I have a smaller competition. And so it really, um, and the thing about it is, what is so sad is what that has also led to is the exotification of the black body because really a lot of um, skills and talents of people of color are not placed to they're not valued intrinsically as a human being. Their body is just exotified, but the value to their well-being or to their humanity, there's no value placed in their humanity. So um, even when people of color do have skills and talents, their body is still it's just exotified. Or there's this term or a slogan that is said, "You're a credit to your race," or "You're a good one," or whatever. So it's still not. It's like you're never given an opportunity um, to really be valued by your existence. You always have to prove, always have to prove, you always have to prove, you always have to prove. And that's what it's like to be a person of color. There needs to be a snap react. These are the facts you have stated, Christy. And so chapter 4, he talks about biology. Um, and he talks about biological racism and he defines biological racism. Um, I think uh I don't know, Chrissy. I don't know if our pages are the same. Yeah, our pages are the same. Yeah, they are the same. Never mind. Take that back. So he defines biological racism on page 44 by saying biological racist, I mean, that's what I meant to say, is one who is expressing the idea that the races are meaningfully different in their biology and that these differences create a hierarchy of value, which is what I'm talking about in the exotification of the body. Um, and still viewing the body like you're just good for singing or playing piano or you know like we black people are often valued for our skills with our hands or our ability to play sports or our ability to sing, but our humanity and our intellect and our personhood isn't really given the same value. um, Biological anti-racism or anti-racist is one who is expressing the idea that the races are meaningfully the same in their biology and there are no genetic racial differences. So um, that's offering that just like what I was saying, that when you value people because of their humanity, you don't see a difference in their worth, their value because of their race. Now, I do see a valuing. I want to clarify that because that can be misconstrued as color blindness. I do see a value in the culture and the uniquenesses that cultures all over the world contribute to humanity. I don't see it just to ignore the value of cultures and ignore the nuance and the interesting worldview that each culture offers. However, when we place value on their humanity because of their race, if you say there's a difference in your value because of your humanity, it's just I don't. This is a weird way to explain it. It's just like if I bought if I bought Code Red Mountain Dew and regular Mountain Dew. I mean, if you go to the store, they're the same. You're buying the same. They're going to be priced the same. But what racial? Let me see. Let me get the term. Biological racist. What they would say is the Mountain Dew, the regular Mountain Dew, is valued more because it's a different flavor. So that's the difference when we say that the worth of your humanity is more because of your race or less because of your race. There's a distinction there. So I want to make sure that we're making that distinction. I clearly remember being taught this, having these real conversations as early as elementary school. I remember as a child believing that people of different races were different species. Wow. Thank you for that honesty. It makes me sick looking back. Now that is no, we have to be honest with that. That's the only way that we're going to be able to grow and dispel myths and offer where sometimes a lot of those teachings, I'm not saying in your case, Christy, I'm just saying in general, a lot of those times when we're not willing to do like what you just did, Christy, and admit some of the problematic things that we grew up being taught, they'll be there. They'll still be there latent and dormant and unaddressed, and we kind of act them out and don't see them. Um, like for example, um, I'm gonna just say this is another organization that I was um, an employee at. And the first day that I was there, this lady, she was older, an older white lady. She came up to me in front of her husband and she said, I am so sorry, but I just can't resist. I just have to do this. And she took my beard and she said, "Urgh." She just grabbed my beard. And that was so inappropriate. And so, like, if I just did that to her, obviously that would be inappropriate. But um, you can see that there's probably a late notion of hierarchy, biological hierarchy there, that you feel okay with me just meeting you and you just grabbing my beard in this kind of visceral, like almost hypersexual gesture of grabbing my beard in front of your husband. Um, just you can just see that there might be a latent notion of hierarchy, placing you here and placing me here, to just think that I would be okay with that and that that's okay. And I think those are perpetuated within human hearts when we are not willing to do what you just did, Christy. When we're not willing to address when we were taught things that were harmful. Um, like I remember I was taught a joke when I was a kid, and I told my brother the joke that I heard, and my mom said, "Don't you ever say that again." And I'm so glad that she taught me that right then. She said, I'm not going to even repeat it, but it was about it was a harmful joke about an African tribe. Um, And even that's a great pivot to even we have about 15 more minutes to the next chapter, chapter 5 to ethnicity. and how Ibram X. Kendi, he had a similar circumstance. Um, where I repeated this joke that I heard to my little brother, um, and my mother corrected me like right then. She said, "Don't you ever let me never hear you say that again. That better never come out of your mouth ever again." And she said this next statement that cut me to my soul. And now when I think back on it, I want to tell my younger self, you hope what she said is true, because there's a lot about this particular people that now I like almost deify. Um, but she said, you don't know, you may have ancestors from that particular tribe. And I was like, wow, she's right. And then I began to think about, yeah, I could be cracking a joke on myself. And in the book, in chapter 5, Dr. Kendi talks about how he used to joke. He used to make crack jokes on a guy named one of his classmates, Akeem, um, and how he and his other friends, African American friends, um, they would make fun of how Akeem had similarities with this character named Prince Akeem in the film Coming to America. And they would crack jokes on his fumbling through, finding his way through American culture. Um, and now he looks back on that, and he says that he's shameful of his participation in what he's calling ethnic racism. And he defines ethnic racism as a powerful collection of racist policies that lead to inequity between racialized ethnic groups and are substantiated by racist ideas about racialized ethnic groups. So, back again, when we're talking about racialized ethnic groups, so we really have to really think about what racialized ethnic groups mean. Like, when you racialize an ethnic group, you're not giving credence to the nuance of of where they could come from. So, I just when I look in the mirror, America has taught me that I'm a black man or African American. They haven't told me, or they some people say a black African American or Afro American. That's what older generations have said, or this, and that's why I don't even like the term Afrocentric. The term should be, and scholars do use now, Afrocentric, because the term is Africa. However, whenever you take a whole group and just say that, because I can't really tell what country you're from, or whatever, what part of Africa you're from, you're just black. That's what society has done for people that look like me. If, like, I have a friend who's Nigerian, I have plenty of friends who are Nigerian, and friends who are Ethiopian, and me, and I have a friend who's Egyptian. Um, my friend who's Egyptian actually said that I look like like there's an Egyptian singer that I look like. I'm like, wow, really? So, because he's aware of the nuance and, physical features. However, if what American society has done, if you stand all of us together, you would not be able to make that distinction. Society doesn't care about, the distinction. It has racialized us and just called us all black. Um, so I the what I find problematic about that is when we never give credence to ethnic diversity. Um, but I do value blackness in the sense that there is commonality that I have with someone, um, with another black man, that I can there's some common ground that we can establish that helps us to kind of understand one another. I do value that, but I what I do find problematic is when society is never interested in ethnic diversity and is only interested with Black history and never interested with ethnic diversity. Um, and me, and because of that, I have learned as a kid, I never really learned to value, you know, the nuances of ethnic diversity until I got like, especially until I got to college and middle school. My mom wanted to kind of foster that into me. My mother wasn't the one who raised me as a child. Um, she was a part of my upbringing in middle school and high school. Um, but that's when I really began to pay attention to kind of ethnic diversity. Um, but so another thing that Kendi talks about in this chapter, um, um, I'm reading from this study guide as well because I like how it pulls out certain points as well. And it says that Kendi once found himself challenged by his own ethnic racism when, as a professor, he invited a student from Ghana to speak to his class. The Ghanaian student recited stereotypes about African Americans. About African Americans, inciting the ire. Is it ire? IRE? Sorry, I don't know that word, guys. Inciting the ire of Kendi's African American students. Hmm. So somebody look up IRE for me. Christy, can you look up IRE for me? IRE, what that means. Kendi tried to challenge the student by naming stereotypes of African immigrants, which only worsened tensions. After class, Kendi asked the student for British stereotypes of Africans, and he believed them to be true. When the student adamantly denied the stereotypes, Kendi asked him to consider from where his ideas about African Americans might have come. Another student responded, American rights. After witnessing this response, the student finally understood his error. But that's another thing that I've experienced too. I've experienced when I'm in discussion with like African American, like myself, one who's never been in Africa, and my citizenship has always been in America. And an African American, they were born in Africa or lived in Africa and come to America. A lot of that conversation is very eye opening, um, especially for someone like myself who has internalized a lot of a lot of assimilation. Um, I've found myself even growing up internal or judging other African Americans because of certain stereotypes that I internalized and believed, and then did not want to embody. Um, and I would look at other Black men who I believed embody these stereotypes, and I would look on them with disdain. And talking with actual African Americans who were once citizens of Africa, I began to hear a lot of their worldview is very humbling because they're not as their sense of assimilation is very much more removed from mine. Someone who's been a victim of it my whole life and has learned to internalize it, as opposed to someone who's new to it. Um, and then talking about a lot of the internalized assimilation and ethnic racism that we even as African Americans foster. But I think this particular chapter is very eye opening and should be visited with, especially within a lot of by a lot of Black people. Um, Kendi, well, this study guide offers it has this other point. It says throughout its history, the U.S. has used ethnic racism to defend exclusionary immigration policies. The ideas perpetuated by these policies become internalized through different racial ethnic communities who then see themselves as better than others that share their racial identities. So, um, what I was just saying. So I assimilated. Um, it means anger. Thank you, Rev. Yeah. So let me read that again. I'm gonna read that again in context, knowing that. So it says, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay. The Ghanaian student recited stereotypes about African Americans, inciting the ire of Kendi's African American students. And there is, like I said, there is sometimes contention between persons who have lived in America their whole lives and persons um, who have migrated to the States from Africa, because the worldviews are different, especially because of the internalized assimilation and the internalized ethnic racism that some of us African Americans have fallen victim of and unaware of it. Um, but also, the study guide says that ethnic racism leads to angrily trashing the racist ideas about one's own group, but happily consuming the racist ideas about other ethnic groups. Woo! Let me say that again. Ethnic racism leads to angrily trashing the racist ideas about one's own group, but happily consuming the racist ideas about other ethnic groups. Wow. However, this fact factionalism, faction, fact factionalism only obscures the power of ethnic racism at work. So I want to unpack that, and if you all agree or disagree, let me know. I want to make sure that I'm getting a clear understanding. So when he's saying ethnic racism leads to angrily trashing the racist ideas of one's own group. So that's like black people speaking against racism. And let me say that this way: black people justly speaking against racism, and but happily consuming the racist ideas about other ethnic groups. So how I am interpreting that is happily consuming the racist ideas about so how we may say negative things about other people of Africa, people who are citizens of Africa or migrated from Africa. Some of the oppressive ideas that we may say um, about that, or even about African culture. Um, I think it's very problematic how we as Black people will down racism, but then also down um, a lot a lot about African culture and a lot about African people who create stereotypes. I had a friend I had on a dashiki, and I'm gonna say this in the real close. I knew he didn't mean anything, but when he said it, I just thought of the ethnic racism within him that probably exists within him. I had on a dashiki and I walked up to him and I said, "What's up? What's up?" And he was like, he did like like um like he like clicked at me like that was supposed to be like a language, an African language or something. But that really kind of just turned my stomach at how we can perpetuate ethnic racism. Um, in many ways, we can perpetuate. We're not the source of it, of course, but we can perpetuate it. Um, but woo! So that I hope that discussion was meaningful to you. I want to encourage you to dive a little deeper into chapter 5. I'm still dissecting chapter 5 myself, but next week we will be going into chapter 6. Body will be meeting on Thursday at 7 p.m. and we'll be talking about body and bodily racism. All right. I'm Nick P. I hope that you enjoyed this meeting of the How to Be an Anti-Racist Book Club. Invite your friends. Page 66, he goes into this more. Okay, great. So make sure that you, Christy shows us that on page 66, he outlines that more. But I hope my ranting meant something to you all. And thank you so much, Christy and Reverend Felder, for being a part of the conversation. And I hope you all have a great week. All right. Peace. Peace.